It's Justin Dawson with a fly flying around my studio that I can't get rid of. Time to talk tech and audiovisual. It's time for another episode of All Things TechIE podcast, where we're talking about Twitter, Facebook, Elon Musk, and a lot more. Greg Jeffries, of course, joining us in an interview. It can only get better as I try and get rid of this fly flying around in front of my microphone. It's the All Things TechIE podcast, episode 75.
Here's the show that loves to talk about gadgets and gizmos, from A-Logic to Yamaha, cameras to control panels. You get what I mean. We love talking all things techie. In fact, that's the name of the show. And here is your host, Justin Dawson.
It's Wednesday, the 26th of April, 2023. Whether you're watching on YouTube and are distracted by this fly that's flying around my studio, or you're listening online, and have downloaded this podcast from Spotify, from any of the places you like to get your podcast, thank you once again for tuning in to the All Things TechIE podcast. If you'd like to get in contact with the program, you can do so by visiting the website, which is coming, a new website design, www.allthingstech.ie. You can also tweet me at Justin or Dawson directly, or at AV Tech Junkies, and we're going to have loads of new ways to contact the program, send us audio messages, and how to get involved with sponsorship opportunities and much more, available on our new website, which is coming very, very soon, hopefully next week or so, just after the May Bank holiday weekend. You can find out more details at www.allthingstech.ie. We have a great show lined up. Special interview with Greg Jeffries, talking about standards, talking about MS Team rooms and getting things into the right shape. And I think the quote from that I can hold Greg Jeffries to as well is that AV professionals like us, we fix the mistakes that engineers make in designing crazy shapes of rooms. You'll hear Greg talking about that later on in the program. Now, what a week it's been. Oh my goodness, what's been happening in the world of tech? Well, WhatsApp and other messaging apps oppose surveillance. When England gets a cold, Ireland gets the flu. Like, we get it 100 times worse is really the metaphor of that. Well, WhatsApp, Signal and other messaging services have urged the government to rethink the Online Safety Bill, the OSB. This is over in England. They are concerned that the bill could undermine end-to-end encryption, which means the message can only be read on the sender of the recipient's app and nowhere else. Ministers want the regulator to be able to ask the platforms to monitor users to root out child abuse images. The government says it is possible to have both privacy and child safety. We support strong encryption, a government official said. This is the UK government, but we cannot come at a cost of public safety. Tech companies have a moral duty to ensure that they're not blinding themselves and law enforcement to the unprecedented levels of child sexual abuse on their platforms. The Online Safety Bill in no way represents a ban on end-to-end encryption, nor will it require services to weaken encryption. End-to-end encryption E2EE provides the most robust level of security because nobody other than the sender and the intended recipient can read the message information. And this has come up before, listeners. Like, there was times where there was legal cases where people have been trying to get into Apple iPhones and iPhones that are encrypted, and Apple just goes, can't get in. Or I think that's also happened on Apple laptops before, or encrypted devices. Like the manufacturers go, it's encrypted, we can't get into it. Even the operator of the app cannot unscramble messages as they pass across its systems, as they can be decrypted only by the people in the chat. In an open letter published on Tuesday, the operators of encrypted messaging apps warn weakening encryption, undermining privacy, and introducing the mass surveillance of people's private communications is not the way forward. It is signed by, and listen to this, Element Chief Executive Matthew Hodgson, Oxen Privacy Tech Foundation and Session Director Alex Linton, Signal President Meredith Whittaker, Terima Chief Executive Martin Blatter, Viber got involved. Viber Chief Executive Offer AL, head of WhatsApp at Meta, Will Cathcart, and Wire Chief Technical Officer Alan Jurek. In its current form, the OSB opens the door to routine, general and indiscriminate surveillance of personal messages, the letter says. The bill risks emboldening hostile governments who may seek to draft copycat laws. And while the UK government say technological ways can be found to scan messages without undermining the privacy of E2E, the truth is that it is not possible. Mr. Hodgson of the UK company Element called on the proposals a spectacular violation of privacy, equivalent to putting a CCTV camera in everyone's bedroom. Wow. Well, when you think about it, and I've discussed on other podcasts lately, like a mobile phone that we have, it's a video recorder, it's a streamer, and if you break down the end-to-end encryption, anyone could hack into your mobile phone. Anyways, that's sort of going off on another tangent. The online safety bill will create a honeypot of unencrypted material. Mr. Cathcart told BBC News WhatsApp could rather be blocked in the UK than weaken the privacy of encrypted messaging. Would they actually go that far if, a tech company like WhatsApp and Meta said, no, we're going to still encrypt our data that's going messages to messages? Would the UK government go as far as banning the use of WhatsApp? Well, they talk about whether governments should pull away from Twitter with Elon Musk. They're talking about, the use of TikTok, which we'll get to shortly in the program as well. Let us know what your thoughts on this encryption bill and privacy bill. It's going on across in the UK. We're going to put the details up in our show notes of episode 75 of All Things Techie. There's the fly again. If you're watching on YouTube, I can't get rid of this fly. The windows open up in my studio and this fly just keeps on flying around. If you like to comment on this bill going on over in England, please let us know. Comments at allthingstech.ie. You can visit our website, www.allthingstech.ie, or you can tweet or leave comments on YouTube as well. If you're watching our podcast, we also do YouTube shorts as well. I have to slow down. YouTube shorts. That's not easy to say. That is also on our YouTube channel. And you can comment underneath that and let us know what you think of this online safety bill and the future of it. It's going to be interesting. Watch this space. Facebook $725 million settlement fund opens to US claims. US Facebook users can now apply for their share of $725 million or £583 million in the privacy case settlement. The legal action alleged that social media companies shared 87 million users' data without their consent via third parties such as Cambridge Analytica. The allegation dating back to 2018 remains one of the high-profile data privacy scandals. Meta, which owns Facebook, has denied any wrongdoing but agreed to the settlement. So, listeners, who can claim this wealth of money? Anyone who used Facebook in the US between the 24th of May 2007 to the 22nd of December 2022 can claim in the range of 250 to 280 million people, according to the ruling document. So once again, if you were use Facebook while over in the States between the 24th of May 2007 to the 22nd of December 2022, which is quite a large date, you can try and go for a claim. How can they claim? Claims can be filled in on a settlement website. We'll add this on the show notes as well, or by mail, including name, address, date of birth, Facebook handle, contact details, payment information. Claimants can choose to receive their funds being direct deposit, PayPal, Zelle, Venmo, and a prepaid MasterCard. Now, question is, listeners, how much will you receive? Claimants who qualify will be awarded 1 point for each month they had a Facebook account during the class period. The net settlement amount, 725 million minus legal and administrative costs, will be divided by the total number of points to determine how much money will be paid for each. Now, that you're talking about 2007 to what was those dates? 2007 to 2022, which is over 15 years worth of material. And how many people will jump on the bandwagon to see if they were a Facebook user during that time? There's that fly again. If you're watching on YouTube, the fly flying around behind me. And really, thankfully, I have a great Shure mic there that I'm not hearing the fly, but it's a bit distracting while I'm reading my script here in studio. So 15 years of Facebook accounts over in the US, and a lot of people will go, I want some of that money, of that, in the range of 250 to 280 million people that could claim. I say people will come out with $1 a piece. Maybe I'm wrong. I love to see how many people actually jump on this bandwagon and claim. A federal judge gave the agreement of a preliminary approval by the end of March, but the final approval hearing is set for the 7th of September, where there may be appeals that delay the process further. How will it affect Meta? Well, Meta has lost so many jobs, as has a lot of other tech companies, listeners. Technology author James Bell of the BBC News said that Meta executives would be relatively pleased with this settlement. On one level, 725 million is a huge amount of cash, but Meta has such a large company that this figure represents less than 3 days of its revenue. 3 days of its revenue is 725 million. It's 3 days revenue. It's more than $725 million to Meta. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. More nicer stories, I think, now after talking about Meta there. The wedding tech now at the heart of couples' nuptials for weddings. Instead of traditional gold bands, Czech couple Juri and Ondrej Vedral exchanged smart rings on their wedding day. Smart rings are wearable electronic devices which function similar to smartwatches. They typically allow the user to monitor his or her heartbeat and make contactless payment. It's a fast-growing tech sector, reported to be seeing a global sales rise by 21% a year. So these two got smart rings, however, designed to be more romantic than most. They allowed them to see and feel each other's heartbeat. Interesting. Each ring is connected by Bluetooth to an app on the wearer's smartphone, and by the app, the two rings can be linked together. So every time Juri presses his wedding ring, it both physically pulses with Ondrej's heartbeat and displays the heartbeat as a moving red line, and the same in reverse. Really? Would you yeah, it's an interesting idea. Maybe if you're away from your partner for a long time during work, you press a ring, your partner can feel your heartbeat, similar to lying beside your partner and listening to their heartbeat. An interesting idea. The rechargeable ring called the HB ring is made by Czech firm The Touch. Although the first iteration went on a limited sale back in 2016, the company is now seeing an increase in global interest thanks to the wider surge of smart ring sector. In addition, the business has this year launched a new parallel product, the Touch Locket, to be worn on a necklace. This has the same technology as the smart rings. Its target customers include engaged couples who might like the idea of being able to feel their loved one's heartbeat. Would you get one of these? Let us know. allthingstech.ie is our website. You can also tweet me. The details are on the screen now. That fly seems to have finally disappeared. That was buzzing around my head. And you can also tweet me. You can also use the hashtag as well. Hashtag allthingstech.ie. This is a story that's not going to go away anytime soon. Intel let Google Cloud hack its new secure chips and found 10 bugs. Google Cloud and Intel released results today from a 9-month audit of Intel's new hardware security product, Trust Domain Extensions, or TDX. The analysts revealed 10 confirmed vulnerabilities, including 2 that researchers at both companies flagged as significant, as well as 5 findings that led to proactive changes to further harden TDX's defenses. The review and fixes were all completed before the production of the Intel's 4th generation Intel Xeon processors known as Sapphire Rapids, which incorporate TDX. Now, Google has also released, dated the 15th of April, so about a week ago, Google released its urgent Chrome update to fix actively exploited zero-day vulnerability. Google on Friday Friday last week, released an out-of-band updates to resolve an actively exploited zero-day flaw in its Chrome web browser, making the first such bug to be addressed since the start of the year. Tracked as CVE 2023-2033, the high-severity vulnerability has been described as a type confusion issue in the V8 JavaScript engine. Type confusion in V8's Google Chrome prior to allowed remote attacker to potentially exploit heap corruption via a crafted HTML page. And then Ghost Token, or zero-day vulnerability in Google Cloud, as elaborated in recent posts from Asterisk Security. The Ghost Token zero-day vulnerability could allow infecting the target Google Cloud with malicious apps. Specifically, the flaw affected Google account application management page, the option allowing users to view the apps in use. An adversary could connect malicious apps to the account and hide them permanently from the user. As a result, the respective Google account user could never know the presence of the malicious app, inadvertently continuing to use the infected account. Or the affected account, rather. Briefly, the flaw exists due to how the app connects to Google account via token. So they've done the updates, and just to be aware of that you should also make sure that your Google Chrome is up to date.
We not only have voices for a podcast, but also faces for YouTube. Don't miss your next episode. All Things TechIE Podcast.
Now, AI. Before we get into our conversation with Greg Jeffries, we're talking about AI again. And AI speed cameras capable of detecting phone and seatbelt use considered by the Irish police force on Garda Síochána. The new technology may form part of a €100 million system operated by a private company. What do you think of this? So you could be driving, you could be using a mobile phone, which is illegal, and you're not supposed to do that. Hands-free, maybe you get away with that, but don't be putting a phone to your ear or looking down at your phone. On Garda Síochána, or the Irish Police Force, is examining a new speed camera technology which will be capable of detecting drivers who are not wearing seatbelts or using mobile phones while driving. The technology will form part of a planned €100 million spend on the new traffic monitoring systems, which will be installed, maintained and operated by a private company. If the relevant legislation is passed by the Oireachtas or our Irish government, the new cameras will also be capable of detecting if the drivers are using bus lanes illegally or breaking traffic lights. The new system will be replaced by a current contract Gardaí have with the private provider GoSafe, which operates 1,400 safety camera zones across the country. Currently, the cameras are only capable of monitoring if drivers are obeying the speed limit. As well as watching for seatbelt and mobile phone use, the new camera network may be expanded to enforce the speed limit by monitoring the time it takes a vehicle to travel a certain distance. And that's already used in the Dublin Port Tunnel here in Dublin. A similar system used by Dublin's Port Tunnel, as I just mentioned. It means drivers can be caught speeding even if they obey the speed limit as they pass the camera. Details of the Garda requirements or the police requirements are contained in tendering documents published over the weekend. The Gardaí said it is seeking market information on the possibility of using private service for the provision, installation, commissioning, maintenance and operation of safety cameras for the monitoring of vehicle speeds. The proposed services may be expanded in the future, subject to legislative changes, to include but not limited to the following: no seatbelt detection, the use of mobile phones, average variable speed detection, and the compliance with traffic lights and bus lane usage. The Gardaí said they are seeking to learn about opportunities for emerging technologies and innovation. I am so eager to know, like, how it would read a moving vehicle traveling towards a camera positioned, and it can judge in that couple of seconds whether a driver is wearing a seatbelt or using the mobile phone. That's incredible. I love to actually see one of these physically in action. Seatbelt and mobile phone detection systems use two cameras, one to photograph the license plate and the other that photographs the driver. It uses artificial intelligence to analyze the images and determine if the driver is using a device or failing to wear their belt. If a potential offence is detected, the image is usually verified by human before fixed charge penalty notice is sent out. The technology is already being rolled out by several police forces in the UK and Australia. Once again, if UK do something like a small cold, Ireland dies. So we're copying the UK and Australia on these. In Ireland, drivers caught by Gardaí without a seatbelt will automatically receive an €120 fine. Use of mobile phone while driving attracts a €120 fine and 3 penalty points. Let us know what you think. AI doing all this work. It's already rolled out in some parts of the UK and in Australia. Love to get some thoughts from our international audience of what they think of this. Contact us at allthingstech.ie. You can tweet me below all the details at Justin or Dawson if you're listening to the podcast, or you can tweet at AV Tech Junkies for the show notes as well. Now, also, have a look at this. Would you let an AI robot to do your dentistry? I was on an AV Nations podcast only last week, and I had just got some dentistry done, and the dentist really scrubbed my teeth and filed my teeth quite sore, and it was sensitive. Would you like a robot going in with the drill and AI doing it, going, oh, that tooth needs a filling, I'll just stick in the needle in this guy's or girl's tooth and fix it? Or would you like the human touch? I personally would like the human touch to go, whoa, where are you going with that? And how does this robot or AI know that you've opened your mouth wide enough to get a filling? Or know that it's doing the right tooth and you haven't moved your head? That's scary. I wouldn't like that. So, National Cybersecurity Centre tells government departments, Irish government departments, to avoid TikTok on official devices. Several countries have banned the public sector employees from using the app on work devices in recent months. Government departments are advising not to use TikTok on official devices over cybersecurity concerns. Ireland's National Cybersecurity Centre, the NCSC, has a state agency responsible for advising the government on cybersecurity threats, issued guidance to the departments today against using the app on official devices. However, the NCSC, or the National Cybersecurity Centre, is not advocating for an all-out ban of TikTok. Speaking to the media, the director of the NCSC, Richard Brown, said, "We are not saying the application can't be used by other individuals or shouldn't be used by politicians outside of official devices. There's no reason on earth why private individuals or politicians on their personal devices can't use this. That's not the risk we are talking about here. The risk is to public data held on publicly owned devices." So if you're in the public sector. Several other countries have taken the decision in recent months to ban public sector employees from installing the video sharing app, which is owned by Chinese company ByteDance. Our Prime Minister, or Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, confirmed last month that the government had sought advice from the NCSC after the UK announced a ban on the app on official devices. Whether the government was considering a similar move to the UK, Varadkar, our Taoiseach or Prime Minister, said at the time, "As things stand, we're not advising anybody with the public sector or government to remove TikTok from their work phones, but are still under review." The NCSC has since conducted technical assessment, according to a government spokesperson. Its advice is that TikTok should not be installed or used on official public sector devices except for exceptional cases where there is considered to be a business need. The European Commission and governments in France, Netherlands, the UK, and the United States, Canada, and New Zealand have told officials not to use the app on work devices. Do you still use TikTok? Let us know. I personally never got into the whole TikTok craze. I have enough social media accounts going on. But if you use TikTok, why do you use TikTok? Let us know.
Make sure to follow us on Twitter. All Things TechIE Podcast.
Don't forget any of the news stories that we have covered in the past 10 to 15 minutes. You can find out on our show notes at www.allthingstech.ie, or if you go to our podcast page, you can click on the actual episode and it will give the show notes there. And if you have any questions, you can get in contact with us at comments@allthingstech.ie. And our new website design is going to be unveiled in the next week or so, so stay tuned for that. Now, earlier in the week, I caught up with Greg Jeffries. Next week, I am going to the Learning Teaching Space Management Group over in Loughborough University, just outside Nottingham. Really looking forward to it, where higher ed professionals from the UK, Ireland and Malta talk tech and audiovisual for a couple of days with a load of sponsors and booths to find out about the latest tech that I personally probably didn't see fully while I was running around at Integrated Systems Europe in Barcelona back in February. So I will be bringing over the microphone, doing a couple of reports, but there's one guy that I really wanted to catch up with for a while and put him under the spotlight, talk about projection, talking about distance throws, DISCAS, ISCAR, standards, and how he got involved in audiovisual. It's Greg Jeffries talking to me under the spotlight for All Things Techie. Well, it's the All Things Techie podcast. I have a great one here. We're joined with Greg Jeffries from Visual Displays, a guy that I actually have admired for a long time with his background in AV and also visual displays and also the standards that he's come out with. And he every time he gets on stage, you surprise me with new stuff, Greg. Like and your webinars. I've been a fan of your webinars for several years now, especially through the COVID pandemic when you were doing you had a lot more time to do webinars, I think, Greg.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, we really did. But anyway, you must get out more often, Justin.
I like that. No, Greg is a great guy. Greg, where did it all start off for you with audiovisual?
Well, I have that time-honored traditional way of coming into the AV industry, namely by being a failed musician. I studied music at Dartington College of Arts, sometimes in the dark ages. And about halfway through that course, I got invited to join a band in London. And it was just basically downhill all the way from there. I was in bands for a couple of years, and then I kind of got into a relationship where I was expected to like do unreasonable stuff like pay the rent. So I had to get.
We learned that bands don't pay money.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? It all seems to go. It all seemed to go into keeping the van alive and stuff like that. So anyway, I had to get a job, and I got a job delivering and installing exhibition equipment. And they started a little AV company, little AV division, using slide projectors but making back projection. And really, it all started.
Explain to our listeners what a slide projector is.
Oh yeah, what did you do in the war, Grandad? So before the days of video projectors, we used to use 35mm transparencies in projectors, and we used to do incredible things with them. That's, I was obviously very, very young at the time, but we used to do motion and all kinds of clever things with them, soft edge masking. It was a whole art. Some of the art and craft and image quality has actually, you lose that when you switch from analog to digital. Obviously, overall, you wouldn't go back to it, but it was a great grounding, and also gave me, because of I have a passionate interest in photography, light and lighting. It kind of helped to join the dots up for me. So that was kind of my entry into AV, and also into my specialism in projection.
Yeah. So you went from there. Did you work for any projection companies afterwards, or did you just set up on your own business?
Um, I set up on my own for a couple of years, and I just had a business installing exhibitions. But then I went back to that company with the only paid day job I ever had, and part of my job was to run that little AV division. But I mean, that was a pretty horrid experience for me, just having a not very nice boss. So I basically quit, but I made a deal to take the product with me, and that's how I kind of got started. So from a business point of view, I got started by making rear projection systems and cabinets, and then as video projectors came out, well, I mean, by then we were doing a lot with video with CRT projectors.
Mm-hmm.
And paradoxically, when we moved to sort of the single lens digital projectors of the sort that we have now, or early versions of it, it was actually much more difficult, because there's a whole bunch of adjustment in CRT projection that you don't get, with geometry and so forth. So, it's always two steps forward and one step backwards. But it was most of my career really has been based around that skill, is learning how to make advanced projection systems using different types of projectors, multiple projectors, and so forth. But it all came out of that.
You've seen then a whole lifeline of projectors, from the simple bulbs, the CRTs, as you say, to the digital age of projections, and even going a step further with visual displays. It's now turning into, like, we don't need a projector in this room. Well, you're going to go give me a slap on the wrist going, no, just it depends what type of room you're in. But it's getting more to the stage of going, well, LED walls are becoming so much more thinner, more brightness, more lumens on these, that, you know, some people are going A or B. It's going to be, whether it's going to be a projector, or whether it's going to be a big LED wall, or several screens placed side by side.
So here comes your slap on the wrist, as
Yes.
seeing as you asked for it. I mean, first of all, it's horses for courses, but I think you'll be surprised this year to see how much projection is making a comeback. I mean, basically, you have the fact that projectors are now effectively, or the kind of projectors that you would use, are effectively maintenance free. They can sit on the network, and you can manage and monitor them in the same way that you can manage a huge estate of flat panel displays. Now, the thing is that for serious pedagogical requirements, you do not want a bright screen. What you want is a display that you can look at all day. And paradoxically, that's about the black levels in the image. So the projection for pedagogy is, so long as it's done properly using ambient light rejecting materials, projection done properly is actually the best solution. But the thing that really is coming in with a bang at the moment is thinking about the environmental aspects of this. The costs of running a projected display relative to a large video wall is a fraction of the cost. And the thing is that it's very nice to have a DV LED screen, on a cold morning, because you go in there and you can warm your hands in front of it. But I mean, that's a lot of wasted power and energy.
Yeah. So on there's several things that you're bringing up there. There's the energy saving. There's the black in the image. So you're sort of answering a question that I brought up on a podcast previously, Greg. and I asked, like, when will cinemas turn into just having a big LED wall for a cinema screen? And you're probably going to say never.
Um, I don't see I don't see that there's any need for it now. The cinema is a kind of, it's a sensory experience, and the that whole thing about going into a darkened space and having that kind of experience, I don't see the need for it there. I mean, it was interesting at ISC because the LED, the direct view LED, the DV LED industry is actually very aware of these issues about the energy use and so forth, although there are wider issues as well. And so they were previewing early versions of so-called cold technologies, which use less power. So I think that there's a bright, rosy future for DV LED, but for the moment, as far as higher ed and further ed is concerned, the displays are too bright.
Mm.
And the reference here, I mean, if you think about, if you wanted to be able to focus on something and read it, engage with it all day without creating eye strain, that benchmark would be the printed page. And the point about the printed page is it's low luminance, but really good contrast and very good black levels. And that's the very often eye strain. The fancy word for that is asthenopia. But our eyes are mechanical devices. The ciliary muscles have to expand and contract our irises. And if you're looking around a space and your eyes are having to adjust up and down all the time, well, that actually creates eye strain. You don't, the thing with large format displays, with direct view LEDs, is these are signage displays. These are fantastic signage displays, but they weren't originally designed for pedagogy or Teams rooms or anything where where serious content is to be watched for extended time. Their day will come, but it's horses for courses.
Well, this is true. Like, for many cases in higher ed, you could be sitting for 2 hours in a lecture theatre watching a death by PowerPoint. Yes, we know, but you could be watching a screen like that for 2 hours. So that is going to be a strain on the eyes. So
yeah,
and I guess similar if that was put into a cinema environment, that it would be too high of brightness for your eyes, and it would create some eye strain. Maybe in the outdoor context is where you will see these video walls being created better for concerts and so forth. But as for projection, you're still going to have projection in the likes of large lecture theatres and also in cinema environments.
yeah, for sure. I think the point about these signage technologies is that they are bright, and so one of the things that when they're used in signage in shopping malls or wherever it is, it's the brightness that leads your eye to it. But the real key thing there is that the dwell time, the time you spend looking at that screen, is completely up to you, because if it's a crap advert, you just look away from it. And typically the content length is very short. These are adverts of 5, 10, 15, 20 seconds or something. So the content's very short. So in the context of pedagogy in a teaching environment, where these poor students have got to sit there and listening to some deathless lecture for a couple of hours, they're trapped. And so those sorts of things are about making the right sensory experience for users is actually really critically important.
Now, I think you've addressed that, like, with the LED walls and even digital signage. Like, there is times where you go into the likes of a train station. I've been in train stations before, and the actual digital signage is so bright that is on an LED wall that you actually miss the message that was being displayed because it's actually eyesore.
Yeah.
With visual displays, do you like? I know maybe you're attending LTSMG next week. Yes, we better plug that. We'll come back to LTSMG in a couple of minutes' time. But you 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 do a lot with higher ed, but that's not your only primary focus. Do you deal with the likes of standards, with the likes of train stations, digital signage, roads?
No, I mean that actually is a great question, because it kind of begs the question, well, what exactly do you mean by a standard? And then you drill down onto their application. In reality, in Avixa, for the most part, the standards that we have really apply to the so-called Pro AV market and applications. So that includes higher ed, it could include corporate, government, and so forth. And that's the kind of the scale of our ambition there. I think within Avixa, we've got content and best practices that deal with live events, and other applications too. But for that kind of thing, no, it's that there's a whole separate universe of digital signage and trade associations, and they do a great job. One of my friends and mentors in standards, Alan Braun and his son Jonathan, they were involved in the early days of Avixa standards with me, but they've moved on. They consult for Samsung, and they're involved with writing standards for those kinds of things. So it's a kind of a specialist area. I'm in my comfort zone with higher ed at the moment. In terms of my consulting business and visual displays, really most of it is involved with corporate. Whole bunch of stuff going on now around the Microsoft Teams rooms thing. But really, looking to the future, higher ed is very much my comfort area. It's the culture that I like to work within, and so I'm looking to do more within higher ed than anything else. That's for sure.
Well, you addressed Microsoft Teams, and we will address that end of things in a couple of moments' time. But going to the standards and higher ed, and just a final question on that end of things is, we were discussing a bit of this offline, that people are more aware of the sensory aspects in higher ed environments with people with intellectual needs and intellectual disabilities. You talk about the fact of, I know on one stage you go autistic people and sound, but like even the sound and the visuals, like I was talking with Chuck about it's nearly a month ago now, and he goes, do you know there's an American standard for how bright a room should be? And I said, oh right, I wasn't aware of that. Why isn't there something like that on an international scale for lighting in some of these rooms? Because I think we've all been in lecture theatres where you just go, my God, that projector is completely drained out, because who ever thought of putting six spotlights right in front of the projection screen? And then you have no way to control it, and then you go, not only could it be affecting an autistic person, it's too bright for the actual lecturer that's standing at the front of the room.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in fact, there are lighting standards, international lighting standards, and the whole thing about lighting research and the human response to light. I mean, this is more than a century old of science there. And what is actually quite reassuring is that the American they've got the Illuminating Engineering Society, the IES. We've got SIBSE over here, Industry Building Services Engineers, Chartered Institute of Building Service Engineers, and the subset of that is the Society for Light and Lighting, which is one of my professional associations. And what you'll see is basically, although the Americans will talk in terms of foot candles and foot lamberts, and we use SI units over here like lux, lumens, and candela per square meter, basically that they are aligned. But the really interesting thing to see with that is that there is this relatively new building standard called WELL, and now there's a version 2 of that. And what WELL does is to take all of the various environmental standards and pull them into one pot. And the thing that I particularly love about WELL is that it actually stitches into the AVIXA standards, because if you think about image quality, that is that's a metric of contrast. And so what you're doing there is you're talking about a relative level, but not an absolute level. Mm-hmm. And if you tie that in with the metrics that we use to get the brightnesses, the luminances within the room within a certain range to avoid eye strain, those two things knit together. So what you find is that by using environmental and AV standards and lighting standards intelligently, you can make a proper cohesive whole and then take this properly and structured holistic approach to the design of a teaching space or a meeting space.
Now, I'm going to ask you a really awkward question here, and you go, "No, I can't answer that question." How often, as a consultant, do you get, both with higher ed and further afield with other companies, where you come in, you're hired as a consultant, you give the spec and go, "This is what will work in the room." Do you stay with the company to the very end? Because I see this a lot in Ireland, and I don't mean just my university, but I see it across a lot of universities. I think it's a hot topic that happens with universities that are attached to LTSMG as well, where a consultant is hired, then it goes off to tender, and when they think they're getting the oak tree, they're actually getting the apple tree. So like, how often do you see that you've spec'd out a room, you've done it to standards, you've given the measurements, you're saying that, like, I'll overlay on the YouTube video of this podcast some of the designs that you've done with visual displays, but then sometimes it's totally off your design purpose, or do you experience that really?
Well, as you know, I'm a complete diplomat, so I'm going to be very careful about what I say. I mean, I'm not the important thing to say here, Justin, is I'm not an AV consultant. I'm a specialist consultant. So I don't do like a room specification like an AV consultant would. What I do is help people come to the performance metrics. So in terms of what the space should deliver. I mean, standards are being used more and more. At the entry level, they are put in on a tender specification to be paid lip service to, because there's nothing in the process and in the certification and sign off of a system where you have to validate it that way. But that's really the kind of direction I'm taking my work anyway, which is what I think of as being standards 2.0, where you're taking the important parts or the relevant parts of standards and using them in a critical way. Standards can be quite intimidating to some people, and it's important to keep it simple and effective. And to answer your question, people use standards, and it might be just a word that they wave around, and other people really commit to it. There's a whole range of experiences, but by and large, once people realize the benefits of using them, and the way that it helps to manage an estate of equipment, and to effectively to be able to build a dashboard of which of the red light systems, to identify the things that you need that are essential to spend the budget on, and the other things that are nice to spend the budget on. There are all kinds of ways that they can be used to keep the campus alive and functioning, and making sure the money's spent in the best way.
Yeah, like I would be hoping that if you were hired at the very beginning, that you're brought in at the very end and going, right, before I sign this off with the AV company, can you just overlook this and say that the standards are too standard? Does that happen?
No, I'm not. I don't. It's not who I am. It's not the kind of gig that I get to act as a policeman on it. But what I will say is that the best projects that I've done have been where I've been involved throughout the whole process, and and you stay engaged. The advantage about using a third person, the thing is, I mean, the old cliche about using a consultant is you're paying someone to tell you what you already know, but I think using someone, a third party, it's there to keep you honest, if you like, to keep you on track. It's very easy for a team to take a kind of to take a diversion for reasons of convenience, for reasons of budget, or just because you kind of lose focus. So I think that's the kind of role that I play. But my thing is very much about collaboration, because the times that it works for me, and therefore I think for the client too, is when you do feel you've got a really good team thing going.
Like you sort of led me into my next question. What has been your favorite projects to work on, if you were to name even the top three?
Well, I do some work for the UK government, which I'm very proud of, but I can't talk about.
Oh, top secret CIA type.
No, well, I mean, it's just, I mean, a lot of the work that you do is under very tight NDA. Nothing to do with this conversation, but we did a when we had the simulation business, we did a job for one of the Formula One teams, not far away from where we are in Bedford, in the middle of England. And we weren't really allowed to see what the rest of the job that we were doing. I think so anyway, to answer your question, I think the most satisfying consulting I've done has been for Google. That I've done a few projects with them around standards, around meeting room design, and about meeting room lighting. That was the one I think that was a particular pleasure, because I was really able to do what I wanted to do. I was able to write the brief of what I did and follow it through.
Mm-hmm.
A
lot of their spaces, even if you look at even their films that they had with Jack Black in it as well, that a lot of their films, they're open spaces. So even the Foundry that I've been in a couple of times in Dublin, it's an open space. So, but their lighting it's very specific.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really generalize too much about Google, because they've got a wide range of buildings throughout the world with quite a variety of lighting. And when I did that project, I was moving. We had test spaces in New York, in Mountain View, over in their headquarters on the West Coast, and London. There was another location, but it was there's a wide variety of lighting there. But it's that was the most satisfying project that I did. I've had other projects where people have used the Well standard, and that's very and that was very satisfying, because that would be something else that maybe that would be a comment that would be made that's relative to you, because you were just talking now about how you're might be in a teaching space, and the lighting in there is like crucifying the students, crucifying the projection screen, and I find this applies to organizations, right from the big tech companies through to higher ed. The structural problem that we have in order to build the next generation teaching spaces, the next generation meeting spaces. It's structural. Within within organization, everything is so completely siloed. So the building services, the facilities management, those are the
Now you're
ones that
hitting the nail on the head.
control the lighting. And so basically what you say, okay, so let's just think about this. So here's this room, and you've spent a lot of capital money on paying for light fittings, which are going to kill the display that you're supposed to be teaching with. And then you're going to be running a whole bunch of electricity and which is going to cost hundreds of pounds during the academic year, specifically to ruin the display. And can you explain that to me? But basically that is a scenario that is repeated in thousands of rooms across Ireland and and England and the rest of Europe.
But it's because it is different departments doing different things.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I've seen an absolute priceless one. Not in my university. I want to say that to you.
He added hastily.
Yeah, I have to say. But I've seen in a certain university in Ireland, in Dublin as well, where they decided to put in sensor lights into the room. And whatever way they wired it up, whatever cowboy they got in, it was affecting the audio that as soon as you walked into the room, it was turning on the lights, but it was also giving the most loudest speaker hum coming out to all the speakers. So literally you couldn't walk into the room to fix this speaker hum, and that was going on all summer long. And I was thinking, wow, okay. Yeah, that's where two departments have not talked to each other.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's repeated all over the place.
Yeah. Now let's move on to now. Well, how many years have you been? Last question about standards. How many years have you been working with Avixa in doing different standards? Like you're talking about DISCAS, you're talking about ISCR standard, you're talking about the new CTSI and D-books now that are available from Avixa. You've been involved for quite some time with writing different questions
You've
and standards.
done your homework, Mr. Dawson. Yes, so I've been involved with Avixa in that kind of respect since about the early 2000s. And it was pretty funny, really, because I wanted to write a standard for projected image quality. And as a result of that, Terry Friesenborg, my friend and mentor, who's now retired, who was then head of education at Infocom as we were then, came over to Denmark for this session that I organized, and then asked me to get involved with Avixa. But at that point, it was best practices rather, and there was and that was the body that was there. And I initially got involved with producing a best practice on projection and projected images. And they said, oh, one thing you've got to understand, Greg, is that at Infocom, we will never, ever be involved with standards.
Wow, that's going back a long time. They've changed now.
Yeah, so 2 years later, we were a ANSI accredited standards development organization, and we were using my projection paper as the basis for PISCAR. So that particular position didn't last long. Yeah, so I was involved with that from the very beginning. Scott Walker, respected US consultant and a friend of mine, he was a president of Infocom a couple of years before me. He led the first steering committee, the first management committee, and I was on that, and I've just been involved in various ways ever since without a break.
Yeah, it sounds it's like the mad sound guy Chuck Espinosa does the sound, you do the visuals.
Yeah,
it's a good combination.
Oh, Chuck is a smart cookie. He's way smarter than me. He's got a much wider knowledge base. I'm a kind of I'm a specialist. I'm a bit of a one trick pony, if truth be told. But Chuck is just an amazing guy and a most brilliant
How
communicator.
much did he pay you to say that, Chuck? I know you're listening.
Oh, but I mean, he's off now. He's doing another thing, but no, he's an amazing guy. That's one of the particularly special things about my whole experience with Infocom and Avixa, that they are my most treasured professional achievements, if you like, or and to get the chance to meet and to work with people who are smarter than you, who know more than you, and everyone's doing something for a common good. That's about as good as it gets, for me.
Absolutely. No, it must bring some like warmth knowing that, like, oh, I wrote this, and people are paying attention and people are actually following these standards, especially like, you know, I even see it in Ireland that there's a more intake now of people getting their CTS, and then we have one CTSD holder in Ireland that's done the exam, and still to have one CTSI holder. I love to get past that exam, but we'll come back to that at a later stage when I have more time. Let's talk about your project that you're really working on at the moment. Is now, I have to ask this question in a light context because I'm a Zoom lover, as most of our listeners will learn that I don't have shares in Zoom, but I'm a bit of a Zoom lover. But you really concentrate on the MS Teams certifications and going down that route with visual displays. Why just Teams? Like, or does it overlap with Zoom a lot?
It overlaps completely in reality. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of Zoom as well. I run webinars as you've referred, and I run that off a pro Zoom platform. It's a fantastic thing, and paradoxically, Microsoft, if you think of them back in the day when Bill Gates was poo-pooing the internet and saying he didn't think it was going to get anywhere, and then this little upstart company called Netscape made the
Netscape,
first browser.
Remember Netscape?
And then Microsoft promptly squashed it with Internet Explorer, which was for free. Whereas now, if Microsoft are going to be even more successful than they are with Teams, then the catchword there is interoperability. So I think this thing about having multiple platforms in these spaces is really important. No, I mean, as you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone was talking about Zoom, and Zoom really had its moment in the sun. But in a way, the thing that made you realize that the pendulum had swung very firmly to the Microsoft end of the scale was how much Teams was talked about on campuses, in higher ed. That was the big thing. So I mean, Teams rooms, it's a bit like saying Hoover for vacuum cleaner, or maybe you should say Dyson now, I suppose. And I think the Teams rooms is very much the campfire around which a lot of these debates happen. But I think the principles apply, and the things that I talk about on these LinkedIn posts that I do especially just speak to the general principles of doing hybrid meeting spaces and teaching spaces very well. Microsoft also have been unique in that they're the only company who've actually thought about the 3D space, the design of the space itself, and that has a massive overlap with what I do and how I work. So there's a kind of a natural engagement there.
Yeah. Now let's delve into it further. You are going into higher ed, telling people what makes a good space for Microsoft Teams, and you've been doing that since actually the pandemic, as you mentioned. Like, I remember your webinars where you're talking about one that really caught my interest at the time, and I don't think we even got to speak about this at the last year's LTSMG. You spoke about a camera being placed behind the projection screen. Am I correct that you could
Yeah.
you could
Yeah.
so I know at the moment my camera is above my monitor, and I know that I'm looking at you directly on the screen in front of me.
Yeah.
So, you know, when people look back at this, I'm currently looking at the camera, but it's it's something that really is distracting to people that might watch this YouTube video afterwards. So you found ways of combating that problem, and I think even on the webinar, and it was LTSMG at home at the time, that people went, "Sorry, what now? You put a camera behind a projection screen? Explain how this works."
So I have to say that that is something that has kind of been superseded. But it's really very simple, because when we're using projection for hybrid displays, we're using ultra short throw projection. So where the angle of projection to relative to the screen is very acute. And what that means is that you can cut a small hole in the screen, and the light won't shine through it, and you can place a camera behind that. And you know, the holy grail of or one of the holy grails of video conferencing is to achieve either actual or apparent eye to eye contact. But that is actually in practice that I don't think will run, or we've parked it for the time being anyway. I did it as a joint venture with DNP, for the reason now that most people are, you know, taking small form factor cameras like the Hudley, you know, the Polys and so forth, and then they're putting them you know, just there because they're small, and you can put them, you know, in front of the screen, and they can be there. And I like it for, I mean, we're going through a phase of discovery now, but I like it because it's apparent to anybody who comes in and sits in that space how the thing works. There's no kind of like thinking, oh, how's this happening? How's that happening? And everything's out there in the open. So it's a natural and intuitive way of configuring a space.
Yeah. Now, I've seen all designs um of MS Team rooms and Zoom rooms as well, that when you get into this hybrid fashion and high flex, especially in higher education, um, a lot of people don't think about, okay, well, we're talking outwards to the cloud and talking to people on the other end, but they really never think about, well, bringing everything back into the room and having the right, you know, experience for the people that's sitting in the classroom if they have a guest lecture that's on Zoom or MS Teams.
Yeah.
And some people say, well, that's the pedagogy of being a good teacher, to go, right, I can talk to the outside world and I can talk to the students on the far end and also to the classroom. Um, you've probably experienced this a lot when you're trying to go out and consult and say, right, well, to design a a Teams room or a Zoom room, I'm going to put the screens in a certain position. But like, I guess in a lot of scenarios, Greg, you know, you have strange setups of rooms because you have the architect designing rooms that have windows at the far end of a boardroom, and then it's a long table boardroom, and you're trying to get the same audio and visual effects in the room
Yeah.
that it's comfortable. So, how do you combat it?
Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff to unpack from what you said there. I mean, going at, if you like, a bit in reverse order, it's quite paradoxical to me that that very often you spend money effectively undoing what the architects
Yes,
given you in a space.
that's the
Um,
truth.
uh, you know, and I think that that thinking about the waste and efficiency in future building, I think that one of the outturns, you know, as this hybrid teaching and meeting, you know, space develops, is that people are going to realize that you need actually different shaped and size rooms. The actual building will change, and also architects going to have to learn to deliver help or be part of a team that delivers technology enabled spaces. But you know, just coming back to real life, and so that you go into a space and you've got a column there and a window there and so to state the blindingly obvious, you've got to work with what you've got. And what happens, effectively, when you've got, so thinking about the visual side of things, about the display size, the display position, and all those other metrics, is that what happens is that if you have a space that's not ideal, you'll find that you can't make everything be really neat in terms of making the standards work. So what you have to do there is what I call establish a hierarchy of needs. You've got to decide what are the important things, and then accept that they might squash or push out to one side some of the other metrics that you are there. But that's honestly, Justin, that's kind of the interesting thing about the gig, because spaces are different, and it's not it's not a cookie cutter solution.
Yes, indeed, and it never is. Like,
Yeah.
Sometimes when you see the architects, and I've seen universities going to tender with the craziest of architectural designs on a university campus, and you go, how are you ever going to put AV into any of those rooms when you have a glass ceiling and a glass wall, and it's more of a glass house than it is of actual walls, and you go, how do you ever put a projection screen into this building?
It's I think that any building that has got or space that's got a strong character, it's gonna have the Marmite effect. Some people are gonna really like it, and some people aren't. And the most successful higher ed project that we were involved with in the new learning and teaching hub at Glasgow University, there were some really kind of weird and extraordinary shapes there, and it was really, really difficult to come up with the standards-based designs for the consulting that we did for that job. But you know what? It was a brilliant job, and we just loved it. So it's not.
Or you either have new buildings with new architectural designs, or you have really old buildings where you can't touch anything on the walls. Without being crucified. Yeah.
So that's an interesting point. I'm trying in various ways to get people to actually run with this. But my belief that in terms of efficiency is that in many cases that what defines a finished space that gets handed over to us needs that definition needs to be updated, because I think that you don't need for the room to be absolutely finished, because you can make, if you like, a room within a room by having finishing panels that have a certain combination of color, light reflection, sound reflection. You can do it so much more efficiently by actually rethinking what it means to have to be handed over a finished space, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I do like your analogy of like taking apart what the architect has done. That's going to be the quote of this podcast. Greg, we're both going to LTSMG next week. For those in that listen into the podcast, the Learning Teaching Space Management Group, part of higher ed in AV for England, Ireland, and we must not forget Malta as well. That's in there as well.
Yeah.
What exciting things will we have from visual displays? I know you're on stage. You're going to be giving a discussion as well on one of the days.
Yeah, Dave and Aman and I are going to kick the thing off, hopefully with a nice discussion. That's going to be fairly free flowing, just talking about latest things and developments. We are proud to sponsor it again this year. We've sponsored it with the backing of DNP. DNP are the globally predominant makers of ambient light rejecting screen materials. and we're really going back to basics this year. We are co-locating with Epson. We're working very hard with Epson to come up with a variety of really high spec ambient light rejecting ALR laser projection displays. And we're going to have a combination of ultra short throw and direct throw screens and examples on the stand. We just really want to show that show campuses that you can achieve a far better result using a better screen and a lower power projector, to achieve really exceptional results. So just a fairly simple thing, but really looking forward to it.
Well, it's simple but very effective, as you say. Like, people don't, like, I see a lot across not just higher ed but across private firms as well. People don't think about it. They think there's one company that does projection screens and that be it, and we don't need to name that company. You probably see it at ISE all the time, but there is a choice of fabrics that can be used to give a better result. And people, I say a lot of AV professionals don't even know that.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the way that projection is traditionally specified is completely the wrong way around. Where the actual process by which you design a projection system is to, first of all, get the screen size right by using the DISCAS standard to make sure that the students at the back of the space are going to be able to see and engage with the content. And then based on the location where that screen is going to go, you choose the type of ALR screen that you're going to be using, that kind of material. And then using standards-based calculators, from that you work out what the projector lumens that you need, because it's actually not about brightness per se, it's about the contrast ratio. If you've got really good black levels and really good white levels, then the image will appear plenty bright enough, like the printed page. And it's just getting people to rethink the way that projection works. There's just decades and decades of people being used to like going, okay, well, that'll maybe be a 5,000 lumen projector and we'll put it on a white screen, blah, blah, blah. But, with the advent of hybrid, meeting space, teaching spaces, with this whole thing around doing Teams rooms, the old way of doing projection with the white screens and the washed out images, some worse than others, that just doesn't cut it. And so that's helping to raise the bar. It's the principles are simple, but you guys, well, in the UK, the campuses work with these framework these framework procurement agreements, and so there's a relatively small number of larger integrators who sell and install on campus, and we're working very hard to support them, particularly now that we're seeing on these framework agreements that ALR screens are included with it.
Super.
But we're there to help.
It take a long time to get there, Greg, I can imagine.
Yeah. It's well, I can't remember the name of that rule, but things always take 4 times as long as you want it to do. But hey, I'm patient.
Now, if people want to find out more about you, Greg, and visual displays, where's the best place to go?
Well, our website is visualdisplayslimitedltd.com. And there's a whole, just from the homepage, you'll find all kinds of directions to go in. We're very happy that we've got page 1 Google rankings on like 60 or 70 pages now on our site. We've got a huge range and breadth of content. And the website, I'm very proud of the website. It's the best one we've ever had because it's got a load of free content, and you can download calculators and online calculators. And so, you know, everything that I do, all my consulting, none of it's particularly rocket science. I'm very happy to explain the workings and how we do it, but we do it that way because I just want people to can see that we know how to walk the walk. And you know, and then I think that hopefully that's the reason why people come to us and actually you know, will give us a couple of quid to buy a screen or to do some consulting or to do some design.
And Greg will always help you understand the PISCAR and the ISCAR and the DISCAS ratios when you come across them in the CTS book and you go, the what now? Greg will break it down into layman's terms. I know Chuck has done a good few videos in the past with the VIXA, but Greg really will teach you the old-fashioned father Ted of near and far away.
Yes. I love that. Thank you.
Greg, it's been great talking to you. Looking forward to next week at LTSMG, and hopefully we'll get to talk more on and about your discussion. And, you know, it's always great that higher ed people can come together, especially AV professionals, and have a rant about things that work.
So listen, Justin, that was a real honor for you to ask me onto this. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to raising a glass with you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to All Things TechIE podcast, part of the Extreme Media Network. Follow us on Twitter at AV Tech Junkies. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch our show on YouTube by visiting youtube.com/@Justin_or_Dawson. Previous episodes of our show can be found on our official site, www.allthingstech.ie. For advertising and sponsorship opportunities, please visit www.extrememedia.ie.